back from Rhodes and I'm back in the UK. We're going to miss Boris's 4 o'clock statement where no doubt he's going to outlaw lots and lots of different types of gatherings and situations where people can get together. They can tell all sorts of businesses that they have to close, and in a lot of cases they're going to tell businesses that they have to go out of business, essentially and effectively. This new lockdown, what it will do is it will effectively create a situation whereby we bring ourselves to the brink of hyperinflation. And in amongst all this, these rules that have been issued by decree without the recourse to Parliament, because of course Parliament now isn't debating any of this any longer. It's just been told what's going to be done in terms of emergencies. On a flight without a mask on, probably the only one on the flight without a mask on as I do this video. And I'm just looking at through the scriptures, and I'm looking at 2 Timothy chapter 2, where it says, if anybody, no one serving as a soldier gets involved in civilian affairs, he wants to please his commanding officer. And I look at what that means in terms of the world and the church, and I see the way my brothers and sisters throughout Christendom in the UK in particular are not rising up and are obeying these regulations and are buckling under, and I find it quite frightening, because we seem to be in a situation where for some reason in the UK we've come to the conclusion that persecution of the church is only really evident when people are dying, and I can't get my head around that. Let me ask you a question. You know, if I had a church in my home, and while we're having a church in my home the police turned up and fined me or even imprisoned me because I was breaking the law or breaking these regulations, what would you call that? What would you actually call that? And I'm hoping, the same as me, you come to the conclusion that you'd call that persecution. Now, very, very recently on Facebook there's been a video doing the rounds, and it's been of a church, I think an AOG church in Wales, where they've had a meeting and the police have come and shut that meeting down and basically imposed a lockdown on that church, and I believe fined the ministers for having that church open. Incidentally, there's 2 places in the whole of Europe where church is actually now illegal. It's illegal to meet in person, to have a church. It's in Ireland. I don't mean the Republic of Ireland, that is, not Northern Ireland, and Wales. And this is coming in the UK, and I don't understand how anybody can be of the opinion that this isn't persecution. If you're in a situation where you watch a clip on Facebook of the police walking into a church and shutting that church down and stopping the worship of God, where the state can come in and dictate the way in which people are able to worship God, in the sense that they can't sing, they can't fellowship, they can't lay hands on each other and pray. There's a limit on the number of people that can come into a building, where you can't greet each other with a holy kiss, where you can't hug, and you can't properly fellowship in person. And the police come in and stop that from happening, and you're sitting there as a child of God, and in your opinion, you come down on the side of the police. I think you've got to question where you're at with your faith, because you've put yourself in a very, very dangerous position. Just remember the words of Gamaliel in Acts. Go back to the early Acts, I think it's chapter 4, 5 and 6, and look at what Peter and John are told when the Sadducees told them to stop speaking the gospel. This is the town council. They're told to stop preaching the gospel. They're told to stop doing what God has told them to do. And they say, is it right that we obey men or obey God? Just think now, we're commanded to worship. We're told to pray and open the word. We're not allowed to pray out loud. We're not allowed to worship. God has called us to be part of the church so that we can fellowship with Him in the context of fellowshipping with each other. And we're breaking that, and we're thinking that this is a temporary imposition of restrictions, and we're greeting these restrictions with obedience. And people in the world are fighting our battles for us, and it's embarrassing, because in truth, in terms of the Magna Carta, in terms of the European Convention on Human Rights, which underpins the right for people to have expression of worship however they wish to have that worship, the church is one group of people that can actually fight what is going on in this country in terms of the way that these lockdown measures are being imposed on us from above without recourse to Parliament or voting within Parliament by people that we have chosen to represent us. We've got widespread and common now censorship on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. Our own social media is being censored. There's no freedom of speech on social media anymore. I'm myself under a 30-day ban for criticising lockdown. And the question is, if we've got things that are happening in our country that have got real religious significance in terms of the freedom of worship and real economic consequences in terms of people losing their jobs, yet we're not able to speak out and say anything about this injustice. The church had a lot to say about BLM. It's got very little to say about the elderly that are dying without being able to see their relatives. Is this now an organisation that speaks out against injustice? Or are we just behaving the same as everybody else? In which case, where is our witness? So my question is, when you consider passages in the Bible that talk about obeying your earthly government, just consider, where is your line going to be? At what point are you going to draw the line and say, enough is enough? Because if you don't make that line and stick to it, you might find yourself in a year's time, 18 months' time, in 2 years' time, a lot further down the road. And by that stage, it might be too late. Thanks ever so much for listening. Feel free to subscribe, like and share. Plagiarise anything I say. It's not for me or my glory that I'm saying any of this. Thanks for listening.